like Farquaad's pretty great, but this one I like is all just because I think it always throws. I mean, we can talk about it, but it always throws me off how like smoothly and quickly this movie moves. Like
Yeah,
it's
I was
it's
just talking about that. I was trying to figure out how to say it.
yeah, it's a very like well paced movie. It gets in and out. It's like I think it's like listed at like an hour and a half, but I think it ended like at an hour 20. I was like perfect. It's the best thing
Yeah,
ever.
yeah. It's like I can't dislike it, even if part of me, like, might not really like it. Like it's just so palatable and goes down so easy.
Yeah, it's a very I don't see how you can get angry at it. It's not like it's hanging around for a long time.
Yeah.
They literally end up in far, far away, like within 5-10 minutes, I think.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
it's super quick. All right, you want to get into it?
Sure.
Let's make sure all the stuff is plugged in. Yeah. Okie dokie. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And welcome to episode 373 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with.
Seth Troyer.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about movies that we saw this week in part one. And in part two, we will be diving into the cinematic classic 2004 Shrek 2 as part of our Oct-ogre series.
The most important film ever made.
Listen, you got to respect the classics. You got to respect the classics. And the classics include Shrek 2. But yeah, head over to cinematary.com. We got I mentioned it last week, but we have our Toronto International Film Festival coverage, or 2021 TIFF coverage. You can find that at the top of the website. You can filter through. Andrew has a couple reviews. I got a bunch of reviews. Give it a read. Let us know what you think. And then if you have not followed our Shrek series so far, we got Shrek 1 up there and ready to go. So catch up. Let's go ahead and jump in the movies that we saw this week, and we have two new releases for you guys. The first one, I'm gonna kick us off. The first one is the newest in the James Bond franchise. They waited forever to finally like release this. I think it was supposed to come out. I think it was last summer. I think it was last like summer. Then they pushed it to the fall, and then they pushed it to now. Actually, it was supposed to come out earlier this year, and they pushed it to the fall. I take it back. So finally, No Time to Die, the final Daniel Craig James Bond came out. This one is directed by Cary Fukunaga, who is you probably have seen with he did Sin Nombre, he did Beast of No Nation. He also did. Am I correct? He did the series, Maniac with Emma Stone and Jonah Hill. He also did a Jane Eyre adaptation. But he's directing the new Bond movie. He's also the first, I think, American filmmaker to ever direct a James Bond movie. But yeah, I mean, the plot is James Bond, that people are coming after him. He's got to save the world. One of the kind of monikers of the Daniel Craig Bond movies is that he's kind of had like a through line, like a narrative through line throughout the entire, like all the movies. And so, while a Pierce Brosnan or a Roger Moore or Sean Connery, like those Bond movies really don't have that much connectivity. I mean, they might have like a villain or something like that kind of keeps going. For the most part, they're just kind of one-offs. They don't really have any connective tissue. It's just Bond has to save the world. He has sex with a woman. He's super misogynist, and then the movie ends. Daniel Craig's movies, he's kind of tried to like do like a narrative through line. Like you have characters like the Leah Seydoux character, who is kind of like this love interest for him. But I swear it's like they like fall in love, and you kind of get them in love for like 5 minutes, and then something happens, and he's just like, "I don't trust you," and then they break up. And I think that's been the case for like 2 movies now. But But yeah, I think for this one, the really the big complaint I have with this movie is that it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes, which is absurd.
Right.
We don't need blockbusters to be that long. And this one, like you could have shaved like 20-25 minutes out of this thing and we would have been fine. Again, I think that's also like part of the bloat is because we have to like set up all these really asinine um plot beats that like we're supposed to care about. And again, I don't really give a shit about like James Bond like finding love. I'm like, no, I just like he needs to go and like save the world and like do cool action shit. And you know, I don't know. Like I'm like drive a car. Like I don't really care about like his emotional growth. Like whatever. It's James Bond. Um but this one, like I said, this is the last one with Daniel Craig. But this one also has Rami Malek plays the villain. You have kind of the usual cast of characters that we've seen in these Daniel Craig Bonds. You have Naomi Harris as Moneypenny. You have Ray Fiennes as M, Ben Whishaw as Q. A couple of the new characters they have. Lashana Lynch plays the new 007 because at this point in the story, James Bond has left MI6, and so he's no longer a 00, and so she's taken over that role for him. You also have Billy Magnussen, who plays this kind of FBI or former CIA agent who's helping out Felix Leiter, played by Jeffrey Wright from who was last in Casino Royale. You see how convoluted this is when we have so many characters that we're having to carry over. But really, one of my favorite new ones was they added Ana de Armas, who was with Craig in Knives Out. She's also in Blade Runner. But she has like this really, she's not in the movie long, but she has this really nice scene where it's her and Bond in Cuba. And it's pretty brief, but she really like adds this energy, and it's a really like fun action sequence. And so in terms of those like action sequence wise, the Cuba one is great. They go to like this party, all these bad guys get poisoned, and then like a bunch of fighting breaks out. And so you have Ana de Armas like in this really like long black silk silk dress, like kicking people because clearly Cary Fukunaga watched Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, and saw Rebecca Ferguson in her dress kicking ass and was like, let's do that. But really the standout action sequence for me was there's a scene where they're in Norway. Yeah, they're in Norway. And Bond is like running through, is having to like fight all these guys and like run through this forest, and like the forest is like really misty, and like Fukunaga, I think really a lot of the action sequences, I think Fukunaga really like nails them because they're all kind of very contained. They don't feel like they're ever trying to, like, I think Sam Mendes, especially with Spectre, he was like actively trying to outdo all of the stuff that people kind of liked with Skyfall. And so they kind of became not absurd because they're all absurd, but like they almost became like, especially in that movie, it was like literally like carbon copies of what was good from the previous movie. So it became kind of boring. And like in Casino Royale, Martin Campbell did a great job, but it's like they were very much trying to like build it off of the Bourne franchise and like kind of mimic that action. And so this one, I think Fukunaga, like he was very impressive, like as an action film director, because he's able to like kind of create not only these really entertaining action sequences, but also like he's able to create the atmosphere around it. You open with this set piece. Like the first kind of big action set piece happens where Bond is like running through this little Italian town, and like you feel like the different like hills and layers of that town as he's like moving through and driving through the area. And I'm trying to think of the last one. The last one is like in the bad guy's base, so it's not as fun. But I think the one that happened in the forest in Norway and the one in Cuba where they're in like this nightclub, and Ana de Armas and James Bond are like fighting people is I think are pretty effective and entertaining fight sequences. But overall, I like this one. It's a lot better than Spectre. Spectre was also super fucking long and was super boring. I still really, again, like to reaffirm, I don't really give a shit about the the continuity in the narrative for this one. I was telling a friend because he asked if I saw it, and I was kind of like, I hope with like whoever takes over as James Bond, like they just kind of ditch that. I think it was more what Daniel Craig kind of wanted to do with the franchise, like have this connective tissue. And so I'm kind of hoping whoever does this, who does it next, kind of goes back to the basic one-off formula. Because I just kind of roll my eyes at like the kind of shoe in how we're trying to connect everything and create this emotional journey. I'm like, we don't give a shit. They kind of try to do it in Mission Impossible also, and I'm like, no, we just want to watch Tom Cruise run and jump across buildings and get into fights with people.
Oh yeah,
that's why we're here. Like let's not just do that really well. But overall, I think No Time to Die is entertaining. I think Cary Fukunaga shows that he, I'll be curious to see him do if he does other action movies past this. I'm trying to think. Rami Malek is pretty. He kind of he doesn't do much as the villain. He kind of just has like a weird facial scar, and then just kind of does like a elevated impression of his character in Mr. Robot. It's kind of like Javier Bardem in Skyfall, where he's doing like a different version of his character from No Country for Old Men. It's kind of like that, but for his Mr. Robot character. But overall, I mean, I think it was fun. Honestly, like I would have watched at the beginning of the movie, we like see that Bond, when he's like left the Secret Service, he is just like chilling out in like Jamaica, just drinking and driving around and hanging out at the beach. And I'm like, yeah, like what if we just watch like a 2-hour movie of Daniel Craig as James Bond just chilling out in Jamaica, like drinking Red Stripe and just hanging out at the beach. Like that sounds fun. I would like no action happens. It's just like him hanging out with people in Jamaica. I'm down for that.
With 007.
Exactly. Like I'm just kind of like let's just have a nice like peaceful, like he meets somebody, they hang out, and then at the end of the movie, like it's still a one-off because the next time we have another adventure in Jamaica. Who knows?
Be cute.
Yeah. So if you're on the fence or you're curious about No Time to Die, it's worth it. Again, super damn long, but that's also the case with a lot of blockbusters. I mean, Marvel movies are the same way, where they're way too long. So it is what it is. I'm just like, there's no reason. You can't explain to me that there would be 2 hours and 45 minutes of plot that you would need for a James Bond movie. So,
I mean, if he's just sitting on the beach and drinking and stuff for like an hour of it, I guess you do.
Well, they waste like the first 20 minutes like setting up all this other shit. And I'm like, no, like let's just have him on the beach doing that
drinking
stuff.
A drink with an umbrella in it.
Yeah, like just hanging out. He's got somebody with him. I'm like, yeah, like that's, I don't know, like that seems like a fun time. I was down with that.
Did John Woo ever do a 007?
No, he just did the Mission Impossible.
That seems obvious. I want him to do one.
I would like a John Woo 007, and then I would like somebody to do a Wuxia, like a Wuxia 007.
Whoa. What else? I want the guy who did Only God Forgives and Drive. I want him to do
Nicholas. I'm surprised he has
Let's do that.
He seems like Nicholas Winding Refn sounds like somebody who would do a James Bond movie.
But they would never let him.
Yeah.
He would have like Kenneth Anger co-direct, and it would be just great. It'd be horrible. I'm trying to think. And he'd be like, "Was it good? I don't know. I can't figure out if it was good or not. It was just upsetting."
I'm trying to think of other great 007. I don't know. I would like to see like something like that, or like
Bellatar, definitely.
a Bellatar, a Bellatar James Bond. Yeah, let's do that.
That's where you would get your like one-off, where he's just sitting around for a long time.
That's true. That's true. Well, No Time to Die. It's in theaters now. So if you want to like have your return to the movies, it's worth it. I saw the trailer though for that Marvel's Eternals movie, and that looks like dog shit. That's my take.
Ouch.
Yeah,
I didn't.
But yeah, Seth, you also saw a new release, and so I'm kind of
did.
I'm kind of curious to hear about this one.
Speaking of Bellatar, it was co-produced, I think, or produced by Bellatar, which I did not know. All I knew going into this thing was just A24, and I think that's what's going to.
That's the marketing.
I didn't even say what the movie was, did I? I did not. I'm talking about Lamb, that just came out this year. And yeah, it was produced by Bellatar, who usually does like really long, intense, like black and white. I don't know what you call them, but they're like draining in every way. And they're wonderful. Like Satan Tango, his one is like 7 hours long. But I was really surprised when I saw like he was a producer when the credits were rolling. Because I was going into this because it's an A24, and I think that's going to kind of hinder it a little bit. Because it almost made me like, I was like, is this just like a shoehorn sort of like, because A24 like horror, I'm like, there's a lot of like baggage. I feel like there's like a lot for them to like top with like Hereditary and Midsommar. It's like almost like just because that's on the post, just because that's who produced it, that who the studio is, that you're like expecting it's going to have some sort of kinship to those. Which it does not. And it's also like, feels like it's sold as first, don't watch any of the trailers. I feel like it's very sold as like a regular horror movie, which it's horrific, but it's more like a weird tale or a magic realism, something out of like, I don't know, Thomas Ligotti or something. Jeff Vandermeer.
Like a Wicker Man?
A little bit. Yeah, it has more of that, but it's definitely more like there's a mood there that permeates the whole thing, and that's really what I wound up liking almost more than like the concept or whatever was actually going on in it, which is it's an Icelandic movie, and it takes place in these beautiful Icelandic mountains, and this couple lives in a little cottage just in the middle of nowhere. And like the opening is really like arresting. It's very meditative. We actually watch them, like these actors clearly learned how to do these farm tasks with these sheep and goats and stuff that they're in charge of, and we like watch them like in real time, like feeding them and tending to their needs and delivering lambs, like in like single take shots. They're like these two actors, like I don't know if they have like a history with like being on a farm, but like they deliver, at least from what I can see. I think it was like a real birth happening. So that happens, and it's definitely one of those movies where I feel like I can't really talk about it too much without spoiling something. But it really is what happens. The titular lamb is really what it's all about. And it's just, once that lamb comes about, you just, I don't know, like for the first if anything, it's worth it for that first 30 to 40 minutes of just like, you're looking at your friends that you're sitting with in the aisle and being like, did I miss something? Like what's wrong with these people? Like what's happening? what is that thing? What is it? What's wrong with this situation? And why is nobody talking about it? And it's like this great sort of like elephant in the room / lamb in the room. That you're just like, what's wrong? It's like this fun sort of like you're like disgusted and you're laughing kind of and you're scared because it's got this like droning soundtrack. And
the marketing for it kind of, I feel like this is probably not, it's not a similar movie, but like the marketing for it kind of reminds me of when A24 was marketing The Witch, just because it was like, you know, a lot of those trailers were very vague. You had like the, you know, Black Phillip the goat, like in a lot of the trailers and stuff, and it was just kind of like this. They kind of marketed it as, oh, it's just like this kind of strange movie set in, you know, in early America that's also kind of creepy, but also you're not going to know really what's going on. You kind of have to go in and experience it. I don't know, is it kind of like that where it's marketing itself as kind of this enigma and then it opens up when you watch it?
I would say, well, again, I can't remember what the trailer for this thing was like, but boy, it at least did a good job of not making me know what I was in for in a good way. Because yeah, I would say kind of like the opposite for this one. Like, because the witch does kind of develop. The witch is still like really strange and like singular in its approach to horror, but it definitely feels like, I mean, it's got the basic like there's a witch at the center of it. It is like a horror movie, whereas this one definitely leaves the audience like, if you go into this thing like expecting, like you're like waiting for when the like horror drops, and it's not really that kind of movie. It doesn't have like, I don't know. Yeah, it's more about mood. It's more about just feeling fucking weird in that theater and not knowing what's going on until the end. And then it just it does get really upsetting. So in that way, you could draw a through line to Hereditary or something, because it does get genuinely like the performances.
Yeah.
Like for some of these like really like hectic and horrible situations are really impressive and naturalistic. Again, like a lot of naturalistic feeling stuff.
Yeah, I think also like the thing with the witch that was so effective was, it was like, if you've seen that movie, you know what it's like, and that was like playing at multiplex theaters. You know, it wasn't playing at like just art house. It was playing at like, you know, it was playing next to like the Marvel movie or the James Bond movie at the movie theater. And so just how you're describing it, it seems like another one of those where it's like somebody's going to go to like a multiplex, like a bigger theater, and watch this and be like, what the hell is this? Why am I at
Yeah.
this multiplex watching this strange movie?
Yeah. And I guess the more I think about it, like the ad campaign, I think it is just like my own baggage, like seeing A24 and that it's got a creepy trailer, at least in some regard, like thinking that I have all these like preconceived notions. But like the poster itself is like actually very representative. It's like a painting of a woman holding a lamb, and it's nothing really all that like menacing. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I want more movies. I don't know how much I loved it. I think I would need to see it again. I had some problems with the third act, but um, hardly something that ruins a movie for me, at least. Is how it wraps up, because it really is about, for something like this, it is a mood piece, and the mood does work.
Nice. Well, Lamb, it's in theaters now, so I guess you can go and bring a friend and have a nice weird experience together.
Yeah, get weird.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll be back talking Shrek 2 after this.
BRB.
Nothing like just sitting here on the stream. Sitting on the stream. Sitting on the stream. Sitting on the stream. Sitting on the stream. Of course, I look on Twitter and there's somebody shares this whole scene where Pinocchio they're doing like the Mission Impossible riff, and they have the whole he's wearing ladies' underwear, and then they also have the scene in Shrek 2 where where they're doing like the cops. This is why are you grabbing me? Police brutality, and then Buzz calling them you capitalist pig dogs. They're just like Shrek 2 was something else.
Wow, sure was. Pig dogs.
Oh, it's a crazy one.
It is. I guess I'm doing Shrek 3 too, so
I think I've seen like parts of Shrek 3. I don't think I've ever sat down and watched been like I'm watching Shrek 3 tonight.
I've never seen it either. So I was just like, and that's like as far as I can go. I don't know if I can go to Shrek 4 or whatever.
Oh, I have never seen Shrek 4. That's the one where it's like the alternate universe or whatever. So God only knows.
I just already feel like by the end of this one, it's like, okay, I'm like surprised you did what you did. Like you milked a lot out of it.
They're like, yeah, at the end of this one, you're like, okay, like we got it, we did it. Good job, good job, team. You know,
I
good job.
Necessarily even need that one, but that was good. And then 3 and 4, and isn't there a 5th one? I don't know.
No, they've been like teasing that they're gonna come out with a 5th one.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been like they've been teasing that they're like, oh, we're gonna make Shrek 5. I'm surprised they haven't, to be honest with you.
Prequel.
I was reading in this is a exclusive fun fact for the Patreon or the people watching on YouTube. I was looking, and I guess they paid like the main people, so like Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy and Cameron Diaz. They paid them $10 million each for this movie for like 15 hours of work. So just like think of that. Like that's
criminal.
Like all that money that they made for just like 15 hours of work. I'm like,
I'm gonna go there. It's criminal. There are people dying in the streets,
right?
Like,
and they made $10 million. They made $10 million for 15 hours of Shrek 2.
Standing in AC and reading some lines. Oh my God, the world.
Yeah, it was just like, and like Jeffrey Katzenberg for DreamWorks was like something about this is the most that these actors have ever been paid for a role. I'm like, yeah, you paid him $10 million for 15 hours of work.
Yeah, I don't even know.
That's more. I think that might be the most that anybody's been paid for 15 hours of work ever.
Yeah, how much is that an hour? To break that, someone's got to break down that math.
Yeah, somebody break down the math.
Patreon.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it.
I'm not gonna do it.
All right, let's dig into it. We're not getting paid for our labor on this one, guys. Just think about it though. Like this episode, if it's like an hour, they made a little bit over $1 million for just I don't know.
That's nuts.
It's nuts. All right, here we
Man.
go.
Let's act like we're getting $1 million for this hour, Zach.
I treat every episode like I'm getting $1 million for it.
That's beautiful.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 373 of Cinematary. In this part, we'll be continuing our Oct-ogre series with 2004 Shrek 2. Directed by Andrew Adamson.
Adam Adams.
Andrew Adamson and Kelly Asbury, from a script by Adamson, Joe Stillman, J. David Stem, and David N. Weiss. The film stars Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, Antonio Banderas, Jennifer Saunders, John Cleese, and Julie Andrews. After returning from their honeymoon and showing home movies to their friends, Shrek and Fiona learn that her parents have heard that she has married her true love and wish to invite him to their kingdom called Far, Far Away. The catch is, Fiona's parents are unaware of the curse that struck their daughter and have assumed she married Prince Charming, not a 700-pound ogre with horrible hygiene and a talking donkey pal. I like that because I didn't like they specified 700 pounds. Like they were like, well, Shrek, I mean, naturally it's a 700-pound ogre.
Yeah,
Like,
it's established.
Like that's in this, like that's canon that he's 700 pounds.
I didn't know he was 700 pounds.
I guess it is.
It's those layers.
Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, the screenwriters of the first film, insisted that the sequel be a traditional fairy tale, but after disagreements with the producers, they left the project and were replaced by director Andrew Adamson. His writing of Shrek 2 was inspired by the 1967 comedy drama film Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. In an early version of Shrek 2, Shrek abdicated the throne and called for a fairy tale election. Pinocchio's campaign was an, quote, honesty campaign, while Gingy's was a smear campaign. Adamson said that although this plot did have some funny ideas, it was also too overtly satiric and political and considered, quote, more intellectual than emotional. Shrek 2 also appears much darker in terms of lighting when compared to the original film. Designers reportedly took inspiration from 19th century French illustrator and engraver Gustave Doré to improve the film's richness of detail and setting. According to production designer Guillaume Aritos, quote, there are a lot of medieval paintings and illustrations and my own influences, which are classical paintings from the 15th and 16th centuries. The design of Shrek is always a twist on reality anyway, so we tried to pack as much detail and interest as we could in the imagery. Adamson, on creating Far, Far Away, said, quote, we knew from the very beginning that we wanted to make Far, Far Away the antithesis of everything Shrek. So we asked, okay, what is Shrek? He is totally not image conscious. He likes to live his own way and do his own thing. And what is the opposite of all that? The answer was easy. Beverly Hills, the epitome of image conscious, status conscious, and wealth conscious everything that Shrek isn't. We thought it would be fun to put Shrek in an environment that was the complete opposite of his world. The kingdom of Far, Far Away is the Beverly Hills Hollywood glamour capital of the fairy tale world. Kelly Asbury adds, quote, it's where the very richest and the most illustrious fairy tale celebrities live, like Cinderella, Snow White, and Rapunzel. All of their palaces are here. When Shrek, Fiona, and Donkey enter this world, they are like tourists coming to Hollywood for the first time. Fiona is just glad to be home, and Donkey is excited. You almost expect him to have a Hawaiian shirt on and a camera around his neck. And then there's Shrek, who is not feeling too good about all this. An ogre belongs in a swamp. Not in the land of swimming pools and movie stars. He's an ogre out of mud, is one way to say it.
Oh man, that's good. That's good type, man.
This is why they make the big bucks. The LA Times in 2004 said, can an ogre live happily ever after? Can fairy tale characters be content with their fairy tale lives? Can an Oscar-winning animated success generate a successful sequel? To all those questions, Shrek 2 is happy to answer yes, yes, and yes. And the New York Times in 2004 said, slick and playful entertainment that remains carefully inoffensive beneath its veneer of bad manners. And then Roger Ebert in 2004 said, Shrek 2 is bright, lively, and entertaining, but it's no Shrek.
Ooh,
Roger's like, he's a Shrek purist. He only watched. He's like, I only like the first one.
Man, he's just pissed he didn't get paid $10 million to be a voice actor.
That's true.
He has to actually write stuff.
So yeah, let's dig into it. Seth, you weren't on the first episode, so I'm just kind of curious. What's your history with Shrek? Are you do you remember watching the first one? And then I guess what's your impression of this one?
It's forever linked to like memories of being in elementary school and Nickelodeon and slime and fart jokes and warheads and stuff. I don't know. That's it's just a complete nostalgia, ska, Smash Mouth. It's all in there. And I do agree. It's a shadowy movie, Shrek 2, by comparison to the overbearing lightness of Shrek 1's being. Unbearable lightness of Shrek 1's being.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, so they said they were going to originally make it a fairy tale or something?
No, I guess so. I guess they wanted to make it like more of a traditional fairy tale, and so I guess they got nixed. I like the whole idea of like Shrek abdicating the throne and them having a fairy tale election, and like like I imagine this whole commentary on like anti-monarchy, pro-democracy, Shrek 2.
I just like imagine like what was that? They were going crazy. So that first draft, they're like, we're tired of all this snarky Family Guy humor in this movie. We're gonna take it out. We're gonna do what we want to do. We're just gonna make them love each other without these silly jokes, and it's gonna be just pixie dust. That's what I'm imagining.
Yeah. I like this one though because I think the first one's great and just kind of stands in its own little, like we talked about it last week, that it stands in its own little realm of just it's kind of this untouchable thing.
Farquaad.
Um yeah, like but this one I think the story for this one is pretty great just because you have like this one of the things we were talking about last week is like it kind of you have this merger of like pop culture and fairy tales where pop culture is kind of the modern fairy tale. It's the modern that's it, it's those kind of even though it's real, like it's these kind of made up stories that are driving culture and driving what people are infatuated with. And I feel like this Shrek 2 really like nails down and gets into that where it, like the director was saying, they go to this pretty much like fairy tale Hollywood, and you like kind of get that saturated, like the saturatedness of pop culture and this like vapidness of pop culture today. But again, it's like it's on top of the fairy tale aesthetic that you have with Shrek. And so like you think about like when they first get to far, far away, and you have the wonderful Funky Town needle
Oh
drop there.
man, that just made me get so excited in that
It's
theater as a little whatever my age was at that time.
but I mean, like it has like it has the Starbucks. It has like all these kind of it's really like making kind of this connection between consumer culture and pop culture, and how those are all kind of intertwined in one another, as like our driving stories today.
Mm-hmm.
That's my super in-depth
I like that. Yeah, no, you're
assessment
you're
of
you're
Shrek 2.
correct because so many of those fairy tales are archetypes, and they're still things that we just kind of rebrand and recreate in the shape of like actors in Hollywood too, or celebrities in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Like, so they are just like we say, like a fairy tale romance still, or like stuff like that. I see that for sure. That they are just like we're just going back to the actual archetypes, which are just the fairy godmother.
Well, I think also to that point, like fairy tales, I mean they were the pop culture of the day. Like those were like you're saying, like those were the archetypes that kind of drove the stories. And I think that you still have that today. You think about, like, I mean, I was talking about James Bond earlier, and like it's like that movie's constantly kind of, especially the most recent ones with Daniel Craig, like they're taking elements from the Jason Bourne movies, which are super popular, or things like that. I think, I feel like they'll probably start becoming like it's a franchise that's constantly influenced by what's popular in action movies that, at that period of time. I think the next rendition will probably have some influences from like John Wick and things like that, just because we've seen how popular those types of movies are. And so I think that pop culture is inherently always reacting to what is popular. I mean, what like what people are engaging with. And so there's kind of this, especially as that becomes more ingrained with capitalism, like there is like this consumer culture that's also overloading. And so I think that that's what's interesting just in general about the Shrek franchise, is that it's really engaging with, fairy tales. At that period of time, you didn't have like that capitalism element to it. So it's not like they were saturated with like this kind of consumerism. And so if anything, like Shrek 2 is a very perfect encapsulation of pop culture today, because it's kind of like fairy tales, but caked in like, caked in consumerism.
Cake.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, this is going good. You came out of the gate hot with this. You thought I wasn't going to get serious on Shrek 2 podcast with Seth and Zach. It got serious. It got cerebral immediately.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's why I watched this. I watched this for the first time in forever, I think last year, and I was like, this movie slaps. And then when I watched it yesterday, I kind of was just like tuning in on that. I was just like, yeah, like there's like this, and like we were talking about before we got on, it also is a movie that moves very quickly.
That pace, yeah. We both agreed on this. That like the pace just starts and it is not an ounce of fat on it. It just rolls. And if like, again, like even if you like are kind of like shrugging and frowning as like an adult viewer watching the whole thing, you can't say that it doesn't go down easy. And like it just feels like it's over like that. That is a fast 90 minutes.
Yeah, it moves quickly.
It's the sliding board. It's a good time. It's some of the humor I find a little grating. Like a little like they're going too hard to like I don't know, like so some of the things like go too far, like to lampoon just how silly these fairy tales are, or like just like bringing them too far into like the real world. Like I couldn't stand when like Pinocchio had a thong on. I was just like too far. I couldn't. You get your hand out of his pants, gingerbread man. I can't handle that.
But then it also has like really great jokes. Like you have the one bit late in the film when the giant gingerbread man is walking through stomping through the town.
That was cool.
And he knocks over the Starbucks cup, and all the people run out of the one Starbucks and go across the way to the other Starbucks.
That's killer. Yeah, some of it is
great joke.
Real good satire. Like that's really where it works for me, is when it keeps its eye on the ball with like lampooning culture and lampooning like the ruling class of this particular kingdom and whatnot, or like Shrek for being too curmudgeon-y. I think that's where the humor works.
Well, and if we also want to just dig in deeper, it also has like this whole commentary on the ruling class, the people in power who are being kind of puppeted by corporations. You have the king who is also at the bidding of the fairy godmother, who
runs a sweatshop.
She runs
the Keebler elves.
This giant sweatshop. I mean, pretty much she's. We got the whole like Amazon and White House situation going on here. So, which also again way over my head, and I was like, oh, this is.
Yeah.
Look at Shrek 2 coming up with a nice
oh man, like the
late stage capitalism point.
I think my favorite, like one of my favorite characters is Kevin or whatever his name is. He's like the sexy he's like wearing a velvet outfit and he drives the coach for the fairy godmother, and he like they go to the Keebler elves like fairy godmother like sanctum, and they like walk up and they start like talking about how like Shrek's cover is that they are from the workers union or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
I thought that was so good. And he's like, because he was like really uptight until he mentioned that, and then all of a sudden he like turns the like little microphone
They
that
don't
the
even
fairy
have dental.
godmother can hear him with, and he like turns it aside, and he's like, "Well, now that you mention it, I have a couple complaints
He's
about
like, we don't even have dental, and then Shrek's like, they don't even
dental."
have dental.
That's right. I loved all that. That was so good. That honestly, my favorite part was a lot of these like minor characters. Like the fairy godmother and Prince Charming are what makes the movie for me.
Mhm.
Like as an adult, like I really enjoy the hell out of them. Like Prince Charming is such a lovably stupid guy.
Mhm.
He's just so ridiculous. And he
And
provides a great opening to the movie, the great like
yeah,
prologue where he like gets faked out. He goes there and he's like, "Oh, she's on her honeymoon, but I'm so hot."
and then we have to, shift into, this movie's kickoff song, which is "Accidentally in Love" by the
Oh,
Counting Crows.
and it's a slapper. It's
It's no all-star, but it's pretty good.
it's pretty good, and it's written for this movie, correct? I
Yeah.
think it is. Uh, which it's fall. I feel like fall is the time for Counting Crows. I felt spoken to.
It's really fitting the mood. Um, and then I think the other thing, going back to the whole kind of pop culture connection, it's also a movie that's constantly, and I think this is why it plays so well for people who are not just, the parents who are going with the kids, because it's constantly making references to popular movies or kind of pop culture moments. Again, like kind of, it's interesting. It's doing it in a little bit more subtle way than something like um than more recent movies where it's like making direct references. Like you think of, like you were talking about the thong scene with Pinocchio, but that's a whole like homage reference to Mission Impossible, like down to the music and like the whole like the whole structure of that.
Right.
You have you have I'm trying to think of the other references that you have in there. You have so many where it's
Maybe
just like it.
Godzilla when like he's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
giant gingerbread man. There's a lot of like slow motion jokes that I feel like you can't make anymore because they've just been done to death. Like
Yeah.
like
You
they
have a
say
reference
it's
to
the Matrix. They talk in base level. Like
there's like there's we were talking about it before, but like there's like a random reference to cops where
yeah,
like
yeah. There's that
where
one
where
which is
Puss
pretty good.
yells "You capitalist pig dogs" at the police, and Donkey's yelling police brutality. It's just
Yeah,
like
and
it's a weird
they
scene.
get his catnip, and he's like catnip. Daddy is not mine.
And so it's like it's constantly like that's what's also, and I think especially in this one where it's like ingrained in this world that's like that's just supposed to be the Hollywood, like it feels much more natural to constantly be making references to like television and movies, because it's a place that like you would assume that that's kind of like
Sure.
the point of reference for everybody living there would be the pop culture around them.
I that makes me soften a bit towards those aspects of it because I do think that is a through line, and it does gel in a way. I don't always love it, but especially in comparison, if you compare it with the first one, because the first
Yeah.
one does not have, if I can remember correctly, it doesn't have as much of that at all.
Well, it has it, but it's a little bit more clever where it's like working it into it's like working it into a joke that's like structured as like medieval fairy tale, but it's also referencing something that's like, that's more modern day. This one, it's more making direct homages to, this is from Star Wars, this is from
Mhm.
Mission Impossible, this, like
But it makes
it's
sense because they're in Hollywood. Yeah,
but you know what they're doing, because again, like the pop culture are like the what our culture is kind of driven on. So if you're up to date with pop culture, you know exactly like what they're referencing with that scene.
mm. Now, do you, I have this like love-hate relationship with Shrek, and I feel like I'm supposed to like, and sometimes it succeeds too well. Sometimes I just hate that guy. I think he sucks sometimes.
Shrek.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like sometimes I'm just like, you're so just like, you're not fun. It's like he is. They do a good job of making him like actually like, no, he is off-putting. He does tell bad jokes. You would kind of not want him at your party.
Yeah.
Which like sometimes is like it's just like what he's supposed to be like, and other times I'm like, I don't want to hang out with him for another scene. Get him out of here.
Yeah, he is kind of like he's a very difficult character a lot of the time. But I think that especially as the franchise goes along, I mean, like in this one you add Puss in Boots, who's pretty fun. He's pretty great. Like
Yeah.
as kind of like a between him and Eddie Murphy as Donkey, they're pretty nice. Like
Oh, I love when Puss is like sucking up to him, like in this movie where he is like laughing at Shrek's jokes and stuff. It's like, oh, that's so good. And and Donkey's like confused because like he knows Shrek is not funny. Like it's that because I forget what this context is, but he's like clearly trying to suck up to Shrek, and I like that whole dynamic there. But what was I gonna say? I guess we should just go down sort of like then there's Donkey, who again I hadn't seen these movies in a while, and of course you remember Donkey being like the funniest thing you've ever seen in your life, and now it is kind of this like, I don't know, it's weird. I was just listening. I was like rather inebriated with some friends, and we were like throwing on a bunch of records, and we were like, whoa, we'll put on a sick ass record. Seth, you put on a sick ass record. Whoa, that's a sick ass record. Jacob, you put on one. And then Jacob put on an Eddie Murphy record. And we're like, this is gonna be great. This is awesome. And then it was, of course, we're like really late at night. We were really inebriated, and we were not prepared for it to be the Eddie Murphy one where he starts talking about how like AIDS is really funny and like gay people better not look at my butt, and stuff like that. And everybody was just like, oh, I'm so upset now. Oh, turn it off. But like, and that's like the one pole of Eddie Murphy. And here we're getting another pole of Eddie Murphy where like Eddie Murphy can't quite, like in Shrek world, he can't quite be as funny as he could be, because it's all got to be like kind of at a certain level. So it's like I wish I had like a happy medium of Eddie Murphy somewhere here.
Yeah.
And in general, sometimes. Well, I definitely don't want Eddie Murphy being horrible Eddie Murphy. I don't want that, but sometimes I feel like I can sense that like Eddie Murphy here is being like held back a little bit.
Well, you got to figure, like, I would like to know what the script for Donkey is. Like, because I feel like it's like for the most part they just bring Eddie Murphy in, and he just like he just says whatever and is just reacting to whatever the other characters have said in the scene. Because it just it constantly feels like he's just kind of improvising everything. Like there wasn't any, because there's no like real like emotion to the scenes. It's more just him kind of running off jokes, and some of them land and some of them don't.
Yeah, that is kind of. I guess maybe he feels, and that approach works more in the first one, I think, because it's more. I think he's thinking a lot more about the context of the story, because the story has so much more to do with Shrek and Donkey and their dynamic in the first one, whereas this one it kind of takes a back seat. And I do think it kind of, his performance kind of suffers from that he's like, oh, I'll just be back here saying silly things, while the actual important things are happening and I'm not really involved in them.
I mean, he technically, you could probably take him out of the movie and it wouldn't like take away anything.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. But one of the other things now we talk, I think it's more apparent in the first movie where like the animation feels
I knew we were getting here.
very, yeah, the animation feels very wonky and like like it's kind of, it feels very early experimental for like digital animation. This one seems, it's a little cleaner. And I feel like
Uh-huh.
that, and I feel like that starts that it's fine here because again, like I like this one a lot. This might be my favorite of the franchise, but I
Mhm.
think that also as the animation, like literally as the animation gets better, I think that the product, overall product, suffers because I think that like messiness, that like the uncanny valley that we were talking about
Oh
last
yeah.
week with like Shrek 1, I think like that you have to have that to like, that's what's also makes it so charming. Like I think we'll probably talk about this in the third and fourth ones where because they look like so top of the line, it becomes less interesting. But Seth, I mean, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the animation in it?
I really can't. I do think it's consistent at least.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, and there is a style. Like the mistake here would be to have just sort of like a baseline amorphous approach to making humans, the human characters in particular, look like humans, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
they are a little caricatures. They're a little stylized, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that about them.
Well, I was when I was reading the notes, they were talking about how this one they made a lot more human characters, and I think that there was really not many human characters in the first one, and I think that's what also made the difference. Um,
Yeah, but I think they do, like, whether it's this one or the first one. I think either way there are definite moments of just grotesquerie, of
mhm.
just like some of these close-ups. You're just like, what am I looking at? Like the eyeballs look so strange.
Well,
Like
just think of
they're
like
like,
human Shrek in this movie. Human
yes,
Shrek is a weird. He's like this weird. I was trying to think of who he reminded me of. He kind of looks like his head looks like Elton
Oliver Reed.
John. Who?
Oliver Reed.
Oliver. Yeah, that's true.
I can see
I
Oliver
was I
Reed.
was thinking like his head. He kind of has like a boxy head, like Elton John.
Ooh, I see that. Like Elton John and Oliver Reed. Then you would get Shrek as a human. I think that's what you would get.
But that's like the. I think that's why I say this movie still has like that kind of goofiness because it adds that whole element of the human Shrek that's very uncanny and kind of odd. Um,
Which kind of works in its favor, right? Because we're
yeah, yeah,
supposed to be feeling that like, oh, this is wrong. Shrek should not be a human, like
yeah.
Shrek should be who he is,
Yeah,
Um,
and I think again, like I'll be curious to see the third and fourth movies, but again, I think that because like as it gets more refined in its animation, I think that that imperfectness, that just kind of strangeness, like that the first movie had and this movie has, I think that's like part of the charm. Like you want like this kind of, you want like that messiness, it's like they perfected the technology too much, and now I mean it's kind of how I feel with a lot of Disney animation now, is it's like it's so photorealistic that it's boring.
yeah, yeah, totally. Where, yeah, sure, it's all about how they shape these faces,
Hmm.
just so that like Prince Charming's face, like while it at first glance looks like Uncanny Valley and it's like too realistic, then you see like some of the flourishes on the nose and things that just like people don't actually look like that. So they
Hmm.
are kind of going for a storybook look there. Like same with why like I'll just keep going back to it. I think Farquaad is one of my favorite like CGI characters. I think he's
Hmm.
just like there's something in that face that is just like if it no one has that face, and that's why you would go to like
It's like,
a weird warped sort of CGI character for this. You could only get this from
well,
this
it's like
like
a human, it's like an adult male on a baby.
yeah, and he's got this silly little like smile and this silly little bone structure.
Well, I think it also, DreamWorks, I think, is better at doing this, but they do like really lean into like the uncanniness in animation. I think, not even just Shrek, but you think of like I think and How to Train Your Dragon and Boss Baby and
Yeah.
Trolls, like all those movies. It's just they just kind of have like this. They're just very different, and like that's why I say like with Disney, especially with Disney animation now. Um, like the most recent one I watched was that Raya and the Last Dragon. The animation in that is so they're trying to make it so perfect that again, like I'm just like I don't want it to be like that's I like it to be I like to see the strings, like that's why I
Hmm.
love stop motion animation. That's why I love hand drawn animation because yeah, it's not perfect. You can
Hmm.
tell that that there was mistakes there or something like that, but there's something like genuine in that. Like there's something genuine in those mistakes. That's what that's what was great about the first Shrek because even though it was digital, it
Hmm.
was like very messy early digital, so it was great. And I
And
think
again,
now,
again, there's a unified style that you can identify, and those are the best Disney movies. Those are my favorite animated movies where there's like an identifiable style.
mhm,
Like 101 Dalmatians is like
mm,
super sketchy, like
yeah,
the furthest thing from realistic. It's like jazzy looking, but
mhm,
it is like this, like you appreciate it because it is
mhm,
so cohesive. Whereas like I haven't seen that Last Dragon movie, but from what
mhm,
I have seen, like picking out some sort of unique approach to the animation is kind of more difficult for the audience and kind of seems like not what they're interested in. They're more interested in like, wow, we've really like made the eyelashes look realistic, haven't we?
well, and I think it also kind of just, again, like I know that there's a large degree of work that's going into that movie because even though it's on a computer, I mean, but the like your example, 101 Dalmatian, it was on a processing, it was on a computer, it was on, a storyboard. Like there was something that they had to put it in order to make it. But I think also like with the animation today, since it's so it's so beholden to where people, you're pulling from a style that's built in house and you're just kind of copying that style over and over and over again through a computer, through the program, that there's something it makes everything so uniform like you're describing. And I think that you lose that just that interesting quality, like if everything looks the same. You think of like Pixar movies now. I mean, Pixar movies, they might shift a couple qualities, but all of the
Mm-hmm.
characters look the same. But then I think of something like I know you're a big fan of this, but like The Secret of Nim, all of those characters feel
Mm-hmm.
like so fucking unique. Like all of those characters in that feel so different from one another, and it's because like they're each hand drawn. And so even though you have a family of mice, not all of them look the same or kind of feel the same because they're all hand drawn in different ways.
And again, a great feat because it is still like it's crazy. There's like cartoonish mice and realistic like humans and stuff, but somehow it all feels like it should be there. And it still
Mhm.
feels stylized in an interesting way. Uh, yeah.
And I think it also goes back to there's just you can't really you don't because they're so afraid to lose or lose money now. The stakes are so high, or at least the self-created stakes for these studios are so high that I think that's also driving why Disney and these places are kind of keeping with this style that they know works well. Like that's why a lot of all of Disney animation studios movies look like Frozen now because Frozen was so fucking popular that they're like,
Yeah.
well, let's even if people don't exactly vibe with Big Hero 6 or something like that, at least the characters look the same so that we can kind of keep that
It's a
that
Pixar movie look.
yeah, they
Yeah.
can respond to it. And it's the same way I think with Pixar. um but I think I'll give DreamWorks that not all DreamWorks movies work for me, but I think that to their credit, they at least try to do strange different things. Like Boss
Yeah.
Baby does not look like Shrek.
Mm.
Trolls does not look like How to Train Your Dragon. I mean, they're all kind of unique in their own way.
Right. I think that's just so much more of an interesting approach, like finding that particular style for that particular movie so it's its own thing. Like again, how could you not keep going back to early Disney for this example, which is just like there's like 4 or 5 year periods where they are all in this like in a similar style, but that's it. Like they like all like Alice in Wonderland is this great achievement because it's just they picked I forget her name, but it's just one artist, and Walt was just like, I like the way she does art, we're going to do it in her style. And then the next movie, like we go with a different, it's almost like having how having a certain director colors your whole movie and shapes your whole movie if you can find a specific style, and that would be something to see in animation more now.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think unfortunately it's not going that way. Even like I'm thinking of I think the most recent animation studio that's starting to make kind of waves is Sony Animation, because people really responded well to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And like I watched the Mitchells versus the Machines earlier this year, and there's some really interesting animated sequences in that, but it also feels, because it's coming from the same studio, it feels very like it's evoking a lot of what people like, that kind of comic book quality that people were responding to with Into the Spider-Verse. And I think that's just, I think at least in the realm of animation, I think you can probably tie that to a lot of movies, whether it's Marvel movies or anything like that. Like people, like it's not necessarily a house style, but it's like you can litigate a little bit of the damage of a movie failing if you at least kind of have something, because it's like we have to have something familiar for people to latch onto. And so if it has to be if the characters at least look like Frozen, then we can make a movie that's a little bit different, but at least people will hang with it because the characters look like Frozen. And I think that's kind of like what Marvel's doing. Like you have something like the Eternals, and they're trying to do you like theoretically they're trying to do something different, but at the same time they're very much leaning into what people are familiar with their superhero movies, just from like the trailers. I mean, the trailer, like all of that trailer is kind of carbon copying other Marvel trailers, including like the little like in stinger thing where there's kind of like a joke where they're making a comment, they're making a reference to something in reality that gets people to kind of chuckle, because again they're like, this formula works, and so we have to kind of continue to use it over and over and over again. And I think that that's what's taking this back to Shrek, like that's what's great about Shrek, is that it does have this quote how the style to it that kind of carries over throughout them, but I think that it also has this ability to be kind of warped and strange and different. And I don't think you see that with like big budget animated movies anymore.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that style is copied by other, even DreamWorks pictures.
Yeah.
That's what's so nice about it.
Oh, absolutely. As we kind of wind down, any final thoughts on Shrek 2? I mean, for you, Seth, is this your favorite in the franchise? Or are you a Shrek 1 person?
Well, I've only seen 1 and 2, and I do think, just for nostalgic reasons, and Farquaad reasons, I got number 1 is just number 1. But this one is like, it's surprising. I think we were talking earlier that it was just like, we didn't really need it. It's the surprising sequel like that, where it's just like, I figured they would, but we probably don't need one. And then like, whoa, pleasantly surprised that it just like goes down easy and it's a good time. And it even adds depth to these characters, makes the first one even better by existing at all. This one does have Prince Charming and Julie Andrews. See, I'm all about the villains in these Shrek movies.
Well, no, the villain, it's Jennifer Saunders is fairy godmother. Julie Andrews is the queen.
Oh, right.
Mhm.
Who they are great too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love all the other human characters. Yeah, like Fiona's parents, and yeah, the fairy godmother was an incredible performance. I loved her so much. I think that really elevated the movie.
Oh, a holding out for a hero by Fairy Godmother, I think
Yeah.
is the takeaway sequence from Shrek 2 that people still latch onto.
Oh man,
I've
and
seen it pop up on TikTok. You know, it's the one that people go to.
it's great. And I love that that whole gag where they go to like Burger King, their equivalent of Burger King or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like Prince Charming wants the medieval meal, and he has this little crown. It's cute.
Well, just the whole sequence, like when you go to the factory where she's making the different spells, like just that whole sequence is just fantastic satire. You know, from the scene you were describing earlier, where he's saying that he's from the Union, to
Mm-hmm.
just like the whole satire of like of factories and factory culture. I think is great. Like again, the fact that Shrek 2 has a really nuanced, satirical view of like how corporations have more power over over ruling class is great.
And in such an overt way. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
as in some ways I complain. It's easy to complain about how it is maybe trying too hard to be edgy, but I do like that it is just like it's not burying the lead. It is like very like overtly doing what it's doing when it's like lampooning things.
Mm-hmm.
It is when it's good, it's really good with that because it is just like if you're an adult in the audience, you know what they're doing with the Starbucks thing. You know what they're doing with the sweatshop thing. And it's not really even dressed up all that much.
No, it's not. Um, well, if you're looking to watch Shrek 2, they got the first two movies on Hulu, so go watch those and then come back and listen to our first two episodes of the series.
You mean I paid for it on Amazon for nothing? I'm a
That's
fool.
the whole irony of the whole thing.
Oh,
Well, that'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we list all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Thank you to our patrons, patreon.com/Cinematary. Thank you to Cam, Chad Newsom, Christina Daughtry, Corey Willingham, Harry Eskin, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we're going to continue our Oct-ogre series with 2007 Shrek the Third, which, again, I know like the whole gist of it, but I don't think I've ever sat from start to finish and watched Shrek the Third.
I'm looking forward to it. I've never seen it.
But I do.
I'm afraid. I'm kind of afraid.
But I do know you have the whole scene where she has the Justin Timberlake poster in her room in Shrek 2, and then Justin Timberlake stars in this one. So
What?
it's all those are the loopholes in the Shrek universe.
Lordy be.
But thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
All right.
It's the Zach and Seth podcast.
I think we